This is Support is Sexy, episode 510. How to make the important distinction between your anchors and your engines. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And we are continuing our rewind. So looking back, get it? Rewind, looking back on some of the powerful episodes of Support is Sexy over the past couple of years. We launched on July 4th, 2016. So we're doing a little bit of reflection. I'm looking at the episodes that really had an impact on me and sharing the ones that you said had an impact on you. Now, if you're someone who is new to the podcast, first of all, welcome. I'm so happy you're listening, but this is a great time for you to get caught up on some of those powerful episodes as well. So I'm doing it for you. You don't even have to go back through the catalog. We've got the rewind for you over the next couple of weeks as I do some traveling and get settled in a new country. More on that later. But on today's episode, I'm sharing a powerful message and a reminder from brand strategist and professional speaker, Michelle Villalobos. Now, Michelle shares not only what getting a mentor and a coach did for her, which you hear this message from me if you've been listening for a while, again and again, get a coach, get a mentor, get someone in your corner for, you guessed it, support. But something that Michelle mentioned that I repeat and remember constantly is the important distinction between your anchors and your engines and why you have to know the difference. And your anchors might be people you love. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So now, without further ado, great rewind with Michelle Villalobos. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Oh, I'm excited too. Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Well, you would think that I would say when I started, but I did not fall in love with being an entrepreneur until well into my entrepreneurial journey. And that's because when I started being an entrepreneur, well, I guess I had this idea of what it was going to be like, this dream of freedom and money and not having any bosses telling me what to do. And that dream lasted, a couple months where, I basically goofed off a little bit. I built my office. I created business cards and did all the stupid stuff that really didn't actually lead to any business. And then I realized I was broke. I needed to turn around and make some money. And from that moment till many years after, business was a struggle. It was all about balancing, constantly landing business, sourcing business, networking, prospecting, writing proposals, getting disappointed when people wouldn't write me back after sending a proposal. So business turned into a nightmare pretty quick, and that lasted for several years. And I would say that I really fell in love with my business again about 3 years ago.
So how long ago was that first version where you went through the several years of just the back and forth and kind of stumbling your way through, which a lot of us do in the beginning? Like you said, we do the fun stuff, the business cards. I got a logo, my website's pretty. And then it's like, I now have to make some money on this thing.
Exactly.
So how long ago was that?
I'm embarrassed to say, but I've made peace with it. I really have. 10 years ago. So from 10 years ago till about 3 years ago. So 7 years I spent pretty unhappy, miserable, struggling, not making enough money, or at least not making that money consistently. I did that for a long time.
Yeah, don't be embarrassed to say. So many of us are going through that now or have been through that. We've all been there. Most of us, I should say, have been there in one way or another. So now tell me, did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or where did you grow up? What was your background? What were you thinking at that time you were going to be?
No, at all. Elayne, oh my gosh, my first dreams were of being an actress, of being a performer, a dancer, a singer. Like being on a Broadway stage was probably my ultimate dream. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that this resonates when I talk about it with my clients. It's, I was born into a family that simply did not value that type of talent. My parents are amazing and I love them. And they're Cuban immigrants. Their story is one of hardship in a lot of ways. I mean, ultimately, they're happy and prosperous now, but their world was a very dangerous place where anything could be taken away from you in any moment. And you had to have a safe, secure plan. And being a Broadway actress, singer / dancer was not a safe path. So that's really what what I really wanted to do and what I loved to do. I never thought to be an entrepreneur until I basically got so fed up with my job at about 32 years old, 33, that I kind of quit on an impulse without much of a plan at all. I never saw myself as entrepreneurial. I never really considered becoming an entrepreneur ever before that.
Wow. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up we moved around a lot. So I was born in Medellin, Colombia, raised in the United States. We lived in Colorado for a nice stretch. And then when I was 12, we moved to the Dominican Republic. And that's where I went to junior high and high school. And that's where my parents still live.
In the Dominican Republic, but they're from Cuba.
Yeah, originally.
Okay.
And my mom is half Cuban, half American. So she's sort of both.
Okay. Wow. So you had such an interesting environment growing up in these different places, all these different experiences. But like you said, your parents, a lot of people I speak to and friends that I have, if they have parents who are immigrants, their parents are usually like, we came here to make a better life for you, or wherever we went to make a better life for you so it would be easier. And then all of a sudden their child wants to be an entrepreneur and they're like, what?
Yes.
Or
why would you do that?
Right. Or a lot of the parents, they were entrepreneurs, but it was out of necessity.
Right.
So they could, so it's a little bit different. So what was it like then? Here you go at 32 or however old you are. You decide to quit your job, even though you're an adult, obviously. But what was your family's response to, I'm quitting and becoming an entrepreneur?
They were worried and with good reason, too, because I was ill prepared for entrepreneurship. And I think that anybody could see that, and I had a lot of issues. I was, well, we don't need to get into all those, but, my parents were rightly concerned about my ability to do this and make a go of it. And they were right, because ultimately those first 7 years, what they saw was me working my way into a deep, dark hole. I didn't go out. I mean, I did go out, but, I worked my butt off and I really sacrificed my health and my well-being for my business. And then because I was so stressed out and, overwhelmed, then I would go out and party to blow off steam. And that was a whole, another situation. So, I had these like ups and downs and all arounds, and my business wasn't stable. And then I would come to them with these grandiose plans and ideas, which ultimately I actually built. But they didn't know, they were like, oh my God, are we going to have to support her for the rest of her life? Like,
right. Your parents just want you to be okay.
Yeah. And they don't want to worry. Yeah.
So how did you get through that 7-year period where you were in that stage of, things aren't steady, you're figuring things out, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, which is entrepreneurship basically. But during that time, how did you not give up? For anyone who feels like they're sort of in that space right now, what made you, what do you feel like kept you going? I came
so close to giving up, Elayne. The problem was that it was the middle of a recession. So I just couldn't, I didn't know where to go. I think ego had something to do with it, not wanting to admit that I had made a mistake. Ultimately, I don't think I did make a mistake. I didn't make a mistake, but kind of in that moment, then I did, but I didn't want to admit it. So there was some pride there, and there was also just, I knew that this was still. I think I knew that even as bad as it was still, I was still the master of my destiny, more than I had been at a job, and I just could not bring myself to go back and have a boss again.
What? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. I think that's it.
What was what was the actual business at that time? It might be different now, but what were you attempting to do at that time?
Well, the business evolved multiple times. I joke that it has the same name, but it was a different business many times over. In the beginning, I basically was hiring myself out to anybody who would pay me to do anything, and that was part of the problem. I mean, those 7 years, it's not like I didn't make progress. I did. I learned a lot. And over the course of those 7 years, I learned how to better align what I was doing with who I really was. So that was a big inflection point when I finally realized, what am I actually good at and what do I actually like? What would happen if I started to build my business around that instead of all this crap that I hate doing? So that was a big awakening, and that allowed me to then brand myself in a new way. And so in the beginning, I was like all over the place. I did freelance work. I did, a company, an ad agency hired me for a year on retainer to help them do big pitches to big companies. And I really helped a lot with that. So in that process of doing these corporate pitches, I realized that there was an opportunity for corporate training and somebody to facilitate corporate conversations like brainstorming sessions and things like that. And the client gave me the feedback that I was really good at that. And so I started to pivot in that direction. So I started to do these workshops and seminars and position myself as a corporate team builder. I started doing improv theater, and I started to incorporate some of that improv theater. And so I really, for many years there, I did corporate work. And that was good. That was better than the very beginning when I was doing whatever I could get my hands on. But still, I wasn't super clear or concise or focused in my marketing and my messaging because I didn't want to miss out on any opportunity, right? I was coming from such a place of scarcity, which is understandable, that I didn't want to narrow my focus too much. So I was doing corporate stuff. I was also I started the Women's Success Summit in 2010. I started doing these small events to teach people stuff and try to drum up business. So I was kind of doing a lot of different things and wearing all the different hats. And that's when I really had the breakdown of being overwhelmed and overworked. Even though my income was still kind of unsteady, my income increased, but then my lifestyle and my wealth, my health and my well-being really decreased at the same time. So that was not a really sustainable solution. And then finally, the third and really the most recent iteration was, or actually no, the third and not the most recent. The third iteration was starting to do coaching and individual, work with people, marketing consulting. And that I did really well at, but that was very much a one-on-one model, which was not scalable. And 3 years ago is where I really took my whole business model, looked at it, and redesigned it very intentionally. And so that was the first time that I had really consciously created the business that I wanted.
And what did that look like for you 3 years ago? What was the change that you felt like you had to make once you stepped back and really took a look at your business?
Well, the biggest thing was what happened first and foremost, most importantly, is that there was a catalyst. There was an event that occurred that had me wake up and realize that I was not where I wanted to be. So I mention that because a lot of times we stick our head in the sand, right? We don't want to know. We don't want to look at the areas that are not beautiful and perfect. And so that was me. I was like hiding because I was making enough money. I was doing well enough. I was known in the community. Things were going good. They were going well, And then two things happened. One thing that led to another. But essentially, my personal life blew up. I had gotten engaged, come to find out that the person I was engaged to was not who I thought he was. very Dateline NBC type of situation. And so I went off the deep end. Like I completely went into my drama and misery all in. I had a private investigator and I just totally dove into the drama for 2 months. And when I finally kind of woke up and took stock, I realized that I hadn't made any money in 2 months. And so the wake up call was that I had not built a business at all. I was not an entrepreneur. I had a glorified job and I was a really bad boss who never gave myself any time off and didn't even have 2 months to lick my wounds after a major heartbreak, So that was the big aha moment. And then the second one was that I didn't want to be in Miami anymore. I was here. I was, member of BNI, member of the chamber, chair of this committee and that council and all this work that I was doing. And I was not really happy with my life. And so I realized that I'd had this dream for as long as I could remember to pick up and travel around the country in a car, like a big long road trip. And I realized that with the business that I had created, I couldn't do that. And so 3 years ago, when all that crap hit the fan with my personal life, and at the same time I realized my business was a job, and I realized I wanted to get the heck out of Miami, all those three things together sort of led me to this idea that I wanted to leave Miami, I wanted to take a road trip around the country, and that's what I wanted to do. And so I met a mentor serendipitously, met a mentor who actually didn't think I was crazy and who believed in me, saw the best in me. And when I took this crazy concept and idea to him, he said, let's do it. Let's make this happen. And in 5 months, we shifted the business model away from a one-on-one in-person model, which is what I'd been doing, to a group virtual model with small immersion events a few times a year. And so I basically went to all of my existing clients that I'd been working with one-on-one and people that I had worked with over the last few years. And I told them what I was creating, and I basically put 10 people into my very first retreat. And from that retreat, put 3 people into my very first 1-year coaching and mastermind program. And the rest is history. My business in the 14 months from when I made that shift and did that first retreat, my business went from low 6 figures to 7 figures, and my lifestyle completely changed. I went around the country. I did my road trip. I ended up buying a house in Colorado. Now I'm totally location agnostic. I go where I want. I work virtually, and I lead these immersion events for my clients, which are way, way more valuable than spending, an hour or 2 or 3 or even a day with me privately.
Wow, that is fantastic. That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's amazing. It's amazing too and thank you for this part, the fact that you shared those first few years of struggling and figuring it out and that kind of thing, and to know that you can get to a point where you turn things around if you keep going, experimenting and trying. Now, do you feel like, it's probably both, but do you feel like the mentor really helped you turn things around and do it differently? Or do you think just shifting your business in a different way, or the combination of the two, is really what helped you?
It was absolutely the combination of the two. And I would have to tip the scales in favor of the mentor, because had he not seen me, my best self, had he not pushed, had he not believed and supported, had he not had the model, the business model that I needed at the time, I don't think any of it would have happened. I mean, and I still work with him today, and I think I'll work with him for the rest of my life, because, it's rare the thing is that he inspired me to become this person now for my clients. That's really the value that he brought to my life. Not only did he help me shift my life, but he helped me see who I could be for other people too, because he was that for me. And then, I believe that ultimately, so there were a few things. Number one was that it became a must for me. I was so fed up, I finally hit rock bottom. And I think that you can wait till you hit rock bottom, or you can create rock bottom, which is something that is not that hard to do. And the way we do it when we're helping people is we really have people get present to what it's costing them to be out of alignment right? Like
Right.
most of us go through life with pieces of areas of our life that are out of alignment, but we can ignore them, head in the sand. We get by and life is good enough, right? But every once in a while, something calls our attention to where things are just, they're really, where there's pain. And we usually avoid that pain. And what we do now is like, we help people go into it and identify it and like, because you have to have emotional fuel to make a change. It's very hard to make a drastic change like I did without really emotional fuel, without a commitment, without desire. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was the big part. And then the second big part was his leadership and mentorship. And then the third was the business model. The income model that I had was flawed from day one. And now I know enough about income models that I know enough about people because my background was in psychology and all that. So I know enough about both of those things to be able to help people say, all right, this income model does not align with who you are and how you want to live your life, right? And it seems pretty obvious sometimes, but we often can't. A line that I once heard, and I love to quote, is you can't see the label of the jar you're in.
Oh my goodness. I was just going to say that because someone just mentioned that to me in an interview before. And that was the first time I heard it. This is the universe then, Michelle.
Yeah.
Telling me that I need to hear this. You're the second woman today to say that. That's amazing. Yes.
It's hard for us to have perspective on ourselves in the moment. Like we can have perspective on ourselves 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even a couple years ago, not much sooner than that. Like we don't really.
When the moment is a mess, and I mean that not that being a mess. All of us are a mess at some. We all have our mess.
Yeah.
But when you're in the middle of it too, right? Do you think it's hard to read the label?
Totally. And so you have to have somebody that both you trust and who also sees your best self, not someone who's invested. Like our parents are usually not the person to give us perspective on ourselves. Our partners, they've got a vested interest. They've got an agenda, and that's totally okay. Like you needed somebody to be somebody who has equanimity, right? Who's so committed to you on the one hand, but detached on the other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's just a huge, huge piece of the equation.
How did you, I know you said you met serendipitously, but how did this mentor come into your life? I mean, I think it was divine, obviously, but other than that, how did you meet this person? Whether you were at an event, a conference or something, just for people who want a mentor?
Well, the funny thing was that we had met at an event and I didn't like him. And so we didn't even become friends on Facebook or anything, but he had a partner who I did connect with and I did like a lot. And that guy saw that I was coming to Colorado to do a speaking engagement. And he reached out, said, let's have breakfast. And over breakfast, I just spilled my guts. I was so in it. I was in the middle of, I was like, at that point, ready to give up. And he's like, don't give up. You remember you met this guy at this conference? I was like, yeah, I didn't like him. He's like, trust me, you need to talk to him. So he put us on the phone together and we just had a magical conversation, and he sold me his immersion event in New York City. And I flew up to New York. I did the 3-day immersion. I had the aha moment around myself of like, because I really got to see myself in that room with those 10 people as a much higher version of me, right? Like, so that was the first time I went into a room full of strangers. I was me all the way, totally authentic, because that's the container they created in that room. And by the end, I really saw my value. I really saw myself in a new way. And I saw how powerful that business model was of the 3-day transformation. So not only did I go and I implemented in my own business, now 3 years later, I'm teaching other people how to do that same model. Like, here's how you give people a 3-day transformation. And then here's where that leads to, as a lucrative back end. So people come into a 3-day transformation. And as long as you're doing a really good job and you really deliver on your promise, a percentage of those people are going to want to keep working with you for the year, either for you to deliver retainer services or for you to coach them, or, there's all sorts of stuff you can sell on the back end. But the key is that what you do sell has monthly recurring revenues attached. So now with monthly recurring revenues, now you even out your business model. You even out that up and down revenue. You can start to count on a certain amount of revenue coming in every month. And that stability enables you to now invest, because it's very hard to invest in people, in employees, in support when you don't know how much money you're going to have next month, right? Or 5 months from now. So if you start to build on a monthly recurring revenue model, which is like the cornerstone of sanity in business, now you can say, all right, now I can hire somebody because I know I've got 25,000 or 40,000 or 10,000 coming in next month. I know I can set aside this portion of that to invest in someone to support me. Makes sense?
Yes, absolutely. I'm listening and nodding. Yeah. So with your immersion events, these are not events that we think about where people have thousands of people there and it's a huge conference. These are really thinking of the model of more intimate settings, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, and so recently, like I said, I've been starting to teach this model. So we call it, small events, big money, which is, you put 10 people in a room 4 times a year at a price point of somewhere between like $1,000 and $3,000, and that's a $250,000 business model right there. Because a certain percentage of those people are going to sign up for a year-long program. And so if you kind of back into the numbers, you play around with them, it's very lucrative and it's very simple. It's very easy to get those kind of numbers as long as, so there's certain things that are important. Number one, you've got to deliver a massively transformational 3-day experience. And that sounds like a lot of pressure, but chances are you already have what you need. If you've been doing your business for a couple years, you already have a process that you can take people through in 3 days that'll be way more powerful in 3 days with a group of other people than it would be you taking them through it one-on-one in a private model. So in our 3-day event, for example, we have a couple different ones, but one of them, actually, I'll tell you about the first one. So the one that we built this entire model on before I really knew what I was doing. That first event, that first retreat was, by the end of it, they would have a brand plan. They would have a brand plan. They would know what their brand was, their packages and pricing. They would know their unique value proposition. We would shoot headshots right there in the event. So basically, because I was a branding person back then, we would just do a 3-day retreat that was focused on branding. More recently, we added a 3-day retreat that's called Superstar Speaker Academy, which helps people. So by the end of that retreat, people walk away with a speaker business plan. They know the name of their signature presentation. They know they have an outline for their signature presentation. They've got their signature story laid out. They know what their call to action is at the end of their event. They know what their packages are going to be for their own retreats or their own programs. So, you can just basically look at your target audience and say, all right, what outcomes would these people be really jazzed to have? And how can I deliver those in 3 days? Not can I deliver them in 3 days, but how can I deliver that in 3 days? And I'll tell you, we have people now doing retreats that are, we have one person that when you leave her retreat, you walk away with a lead magnet with your number, with your first funnel complete, with your entire email indoctrination sequence done. It's amazing what you can do when you don't say, can I? And you say, how can I?
Right. I love that. And I love the idea of thinking about the outcome you want people to walk away with and then sort of reverse engineering, how can I deliver that?
Yeah, because in our industry and coaching, we so often get caught up in like, let me sell 6 sessions or 12 sessions, and you're going to get these many calls, and you're going to get this program, and all these things. And at the end of the day, people don't want all that. They want an outcome. They want a result, and they want, they want the cure, not the medicine.
Right. Ooh, this is good, Michelle. This is good. All right. So number 1, you said deliver a transformational 3-day experience.
Yes.
Number 2.
So you have to deliver a transformational 3-day experience. Let's see. What's number 2? You have to have, so I would start with a smaller event. People get so caught up in volume. I think a 10-person event for at least your first few times is way perfect, more than enough. And in fact, my very, very, very first retreat, which was like a beta, was 3 people. And that was just for people that were already my clients, but I was testing out this idea? Can I deliver massive transformation in 3 days?
Still the same price point, or did you do a beta, quote unquote beta?
The beta was free because they were already paying me. They were already my clients. But the first time I did it with 10 people, every single person paid except for those 3 clients. I let all of them, but only 2 of them come in because, and this is a good thing, I wanted to have social proof of the clients that already were working with me. So I wanted those people in the room because I thought, and I was right, that it would help the people who weren't working with me know that it was a good idea to work with me, that I would definitely add value to their businesses. And that's something we still do to this day. So to this day, when we host retreats and immersions, we allow our 1-year coaching clients to attend any of those anytime they want.
Nice. And then, excuse me. And then with the 10 people, as you mentioned, you sell something on the back end, or different ways that they can work, not just sell something, but different ways that they can continue to work with you. Is that something that you advise people do after these events?
I wouldn't even do these events unless you're going to do that. I mean, doing the retreats themselves is really, well, let me take that back. The retreats themselves are very rewarding and very valuable. And they make the most, well, let me put it this way. On the front end, right? Let's say you're charging $2,000 for a 10-person retreat, $2,000 each, that's $20,000. And that might sound like a lot of money, but when you're only going to do 4 of them a year, it's not really a lot of money. But on the back end, let's say you have a 20% conversion rate into an $18,000 back end program, or $1,500 a month. So let's say people sign up for a retainer at $1,500 a month, which is $18,000 for the whole year, and 2 of them do that. That's $36,000 on the back end. So now each event is worth $56,000. You multiply that by 4, and you see where you end up, right? And those numbers are, as I know people, sometimes hear those numbers like, oh my God, but 2,000 is not a difficult price point to sell.
Not for a 3-day event.
No, and not for
one session.
Well, and what I'll tell you is we don't sell it as a 3-day event. My advice is to make it a program and put the 3-day event in the program. So we used to call it our Jumpstart program. So our Jumpstart program, we positioned it as a 30-day program, and it culminated in the 3-day retreat. And that people feel better about investing in a 30-day jumpstart than in a $2,000 for a 3-day retreat, because a lot of people, can't conceive of having such a massive outcome in 3 days, even though they can and they will. They don't realize that up front. So we would position it as a 30-day, and what we would do is the first part of it was they would do personality testing. We still do this, personality testing, and then they'd have an onboarding call with either me back then or somebody on our team. And that onboarding call would help them understand their testing results and start to think about where they are misaligned with those testing results. So we'll do Strengths Finder, we do a few other things, and ultimately, 9.9 times out of 10, there's major aha moments just from reviewing the testing with people. So that's the first thing we would do, and then we also give them access to virtual modules that'll help them prepare for the 3-day retreat. But we didn't do any of that in the beginning.
Right.
We just
you learned you added these things on as you went along.
Yeah, we did the testing, but we didn't do the modules. So you don't have to do all that, but figure out, is there a way that I can turn this into a 30-day jumpstart program rather than trying to sell a 3-day $2,000 price point retreat. But what I will tell you too is that with the right sales process, which we can't really go into right now, but it's not. That price point is really, really reasonable and easy to sell when you're talking to the right people, obviously, and when there's a really strong outcome that they're going to get. Like if you're going to walk away with, your funnel, all your indoctrination sequence emails, a lead magnet, and your landing page all built in 3 days, do you think that outcome would be worth $2,000? Also considering that you're going to learn how to do it yourself so you can rinse, repeat it in the future.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because of the tremendous value, basically.
Exactly.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. I have one other question about the events. Do you usually now do them by yourself, or do you have other people do them with you? Or I should say, even if you don't talk about your own, do you suggest for your clients that you could partner with someone to do an event or a program, I should say, like this?
Well, I'm not a huge believer in partnerships for their, let me take that back. That's not true. I'm a big believer in partnership and collaboration. Where I want to have people exercise caution is that a lot of times partnership is born out of a sense of lack. Like, I can't do this by myself. Okay, let me get a partner. And what'll end up happening a lot, and this has happened to me, and I used to do team building, if you recall. So like, I've seen this happen a lot, is that partnerships become committees, and where everybody has to agree on everything and everybody has to be in all the same meetings. And so what ends up happening, instead of creating leverage or synergy, I should say, like 1 + 1 = 11, you create 1 + 1 = 3/4. Right? Because you're both doing everything, or 1 + 1 worse yet equals a half, where you're both doing everything together, and then you have to split everything at the end in half. Right? Unless a partnership's going to allow you to double your price point and double your size of your audience, I would say you don't need a partner, you need support.
Right.
So what we recommend is do it yourself, but bring in a support person who's running the back of the room, who's, watching out to make sure the room is not too cold, doing, here's where the bathrooms are, somebody that's supporting you in the room, but you can lead that room. If you are an expert in what you do, and, that's who we're talking to here, right? Somebody who has an expertise and knows how to deliver results and value and outcomes. You can do this. You can create 3 days of transformation on your own. And yes, you can bring in other people, as long as it's not going to kill your back end upsell, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Excellent. Now, one of the things that you help your clients do, among the many things you help them do, is build superstar businesses and brands, which you've talked a little bit about. But what does it mean to have a superstar business?
So a superstar is a person who uses her influence and income to make an impact. That's my definition. I made that up. And the idea is that a superstar is someone who wants to be known, who wants to be seen, and who wants to cultivate all of that in service of other people, who wants to lead and serve. So a superstar business is one that's built around that type of person and does not kill that person in the process. So what happens with superstars is generally, like me in the old model, the more famous they get, the more in demand they are, the more exhausted and overwhelmed they get. And they end up, big problem with quote unquote stars as a profile is that they burn out. And so a superstar model, like the model that we've built for superstars, is one that creates leverage, that's sustainable, that's built on top of monthly recurring revenues, and that ultimately creates, more leverage, which leads to more joy, more freedom, more prosperity, more influence, and more impact. So the bigger a star gets, right, the more impact she should have. But in the old model of like time for money and, overwhelm and exhaustion, the bigger they get, the more they want to just run and hide. You know what I mean? So that's what we help them do.
Now, why do most of us, I shouldn't say most of us, some of us though, especially as women, shy away from embracing our inner superstars, as you just mentioned, hiding? What do you feel like is holding, and how is this holding us back in business, really?
Oh, that is such a good question. What I've seen is what happened to me. And so a quick story. I remember when I was about 5 years ago, before my quote unquote breakthrough, before shifting my model, I had spent about 1.5 years working on this project with a business partner to create this product called Make Them Beg, which was an online personal branding education program. And it was really, really good. I had put my heart and my soul into it. And one of the cornerstones of this brand was this idea of shamelessness, of helping people be shameless, and really taking on this idea of shameless as why is shameless considered a bad thing? If somebody calls you shameless, why is that bad? Why should we have shame? I didn't understand that philosophically and intellectually. And so we put that into the program that, one of the values of the program was to be shameless and to shamelessly promote yourself. And then I was supposed to, after all this work, my partner and I had this event coming up, the Women's Success Summit, and I was supposed to get on stage and present this product and sell it from the stage. And I was terrified. I, just really was really scared of being ridiculed, of messing it up, of bombing the offer, of people not liking me because I was selling something. Like I had all this shame around making this offer. And ultimately, I chickened out. I bailed and I did not make the offer that day. And my business partner was so angry at me. She stormed out of the event and I was just like super righteous. I was like, well, we're running late. People won't appreciate if I get up there and make an offer. I had all these justification. And what I realized in hindsight with perspective was that these beliefs prevented me from stepping into my full potential. I believed that I wasn't good enough. I was scared and I believed that people would be upset at me if I sold something, like had all these limiting beliefs that essentially had me play small. And so that would be the number one thing I think that gets in the way is our own belief system and our mindset. And what I would kind of like want to emphasize to everybody listening is that number one, these are often blind spots. They're areas where we, if we find ourselves blaming, complaining, resisting, resenting, any area of our life where we have those behaviors is probably an area where we're bumping up against our own mindset stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would say is the number one thing that gets in the way with women stepping in is like they don't believe, and they probably, this is the second thing, they probably are not surrounded by people who believe in them either. Generally, we often have, I like to make this distinction between two types of people, anchors and engines. This is something I learned from that mentor that I told you about earlier. Anchors are the people who hold us back, and engines are the people who drive us forward. And generally, a lot of people are anchors even if they love us. Like, I'll give you an example. I did a karaoke spinning class the other day, and the teacher of the class was amazing. She was singing and she was motivating and she was like keeping us going. Like I worked my butt off in that class like I'd never done before because this woman was so motivating. At the end of the class, the owner of the studio says, "How did you like it?" And I told her, "Oh, I loved it. That teacher you have is amazing." And she goes, "I know, she's our best teacher." And I said, "Well, she belongs on a stage in front of thousands of people motivating them." And the owner of the studio said, "Oh no, if she did that, then she would leave us."
And she became an anchor in that moment.
There you go. Exactly. And so that's the thing. There are anchors that love us, that appreciate us. But, we just got to be really careful. Is this person really seeing my best self? And are they committed to me actualizing my full potential? If the answer is no, they're an anchor. And most of us are surrounded by anchors. So that's the second big thing.
I think that's powerful too, that just as you said, the anchors could be, and most times are, the people who love us for whatever reason. They want us to be safe or to stay where we are or that kind of thing, and that not necessarily being that engine that's going to help us move forward.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also teach your clients how to use speaking as a new marketing tool, or what you call the new marketing tool. What are the ways that we can leverage speaking into, as you just mentioned, of this person who led your class, speaking into leads and revenue for our businesses? A lot of people, and I think it's a good question. I'm glad you have expertise in this, because a lot of us talk about speaking or wanting to be on stages and that kind of thing, but really leveraging it into leads and revenue, I don't know if we think about.
Well, I spoke for years without leveraging it into leads and revenue. Right. I mean, because I was so sensitive to the idea of selling from the stage. And so what I figured out was a process to speak and make a lot of sales without selling anything from the stage. And what that looks like is essentially, so number one, it's a new philosophy. It's a new frame around speaking, a new context or paradigm of looking at it. So the way I see, actually not around speaking, around selling, we now have this phrase we use, it's sales as service. And what that means is that sales is service, right? Because without selling someone, then you can't serve them. But also that your sales process becomes one that delivers value whether or not someone buys or not. Whether or not someone buys. In other words, so turning your sales process into an act of service. And so speaking is one way to do that, because speaking is a service that you deliver to people. Speaking is a way to add value to others by inspiring them, educating them, waking them up, having them have an aha moment. So in speaking, you are delivering a service. And then the only thing is that at the end of it, or somewhere in the middle of it, inviting people to take the next step. Right? And it doesn't have to be, and it never is anymore for me, any type of sales pitch. You'll never see me stand up on a stage and do a whole presentation and then do one of those really long offers at the end with the stack. The most you'll ever see me do is deliver massive value in a presentation and then ask people, who here got value out of that? Raise their hands. And then, well, if you got this much value out of 60 minutes or 45 minutes or 90 minutes, how would you like to talk about what it would look like to work with me in one of our programs? Raise your hand. Hands go up. All right, cool. Bring me your business card at the end, or visit this URL and sign up for a strategy session with me or someone on my team. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. And I have a huge conversion rate on that because people are grateful, and they several of them want to take that next step. Nobody's pushing them. Nobody's telling them, if you don't act now, the price goes back up to $2,000 tomorrow, Or
like get up and run to the back of the room to sign up for.
Yeah. That doesn't align for me. That's not aligned with my style. And I don't like it. I don't like when it's done to me. I don't like doing it. So I'm not going to do it, but I found a model that really is graceful and easy for me to do and that generates the results on the back end.
Now, do you do that with every or most speeches that you give, or does it depend on the setting, the environment, what you were called there to do? Obviously, if you're at a corporate event, you might not do that.
Right.
But just to mention for people listening, what is the way that you think about how am I going to make this offer to people so that it's genuine, appropriate, that kind of thing?
It totally. You have to take into account, number one, is this the audience that you're going to sell, that is going to buy what you have on the back end? If I'm brought in to do a Bacardi leadership seminar, I'm not going to be, offering anything on the back end, but I will say, bring me your card if you want to have a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I do ask for permission in every single scenario, every single one. The person that invited me knows exactly what I'm going to do. And that's not to say that I will never, we're planning now a series of webinars, to promote. We're going to launch, and this is brand new information. We're still working on this, but looks like Q1, we're going to be launching a new small events training program. And so for that, generally, if I'm going to do webinars and stuff, at the end of that, there will probably be an offer. But again, an offer that's very aligned and graceful. But definitely whenever I'm speaking, if I plan to offer people anything at all, I always check with the person who invited me to speak and make sure that's okay. And I've never been told that I couldn't offer a free gift or offer a free strategy session for people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to be one of those people signing up for your webinars, and I'm sure people want to hear about it when you get it together. So if you don't have it, the link already for everyone listening, of course, I'll have a link to Michelle's website. I'm sure we can get on your email list and find out about that if you're going to do that, right?
Yeah, well, and also I do have a place where if people are interested in this particular topic of small events, I do have a URL that they can go and download a PDF and a blueprint.
Great. What's that URL?
Okay, it's small events, big dot money.
Small events, big dot money.
Dot money.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll make sure I link to that. Fantastic.
Sure.
That's great. Let's take a quick break for a special offer from one of our partners. Do you spend a significant amount of time creating incredibly smart, valuable, and dope content for your audience, only to feel like one or two people see your work when you promote it on social media? Did you know only 5 to 10% of your followers see anything that you post? That is why I love the social media management tool, Meet Edgar. And I had a chance to chat with CEO and co-founder Laura Roeder, yes, a woman, about how Meet Edgar makes sure your work has a better chance of reaching your customer.
What he does that's really different from other tools is repurposes your content so that you can get out of that cycle of creating 5 new updates a day, every day for the rest of time, which is how a lot of small businesses are handling social media, and it's driving them insane because who has time for that? So what Edgar does is stores everything in a library and then automatically repurposes and recycles your content for you. And the reason that's a really smart idea is because 5 to 10% of your followers see any status update that you post. So why would you spend all this time coming up with content to post it once or even post it twice when such a tiny percentage of the people who follow you and want to hear from you are going to see it? So the results we see for people, you just get a lot more traffic, you get a lot more exposure, and it saves you a lot of time because once you've built up your library, Edgar's sending everything out for you. You can just go in and chat with people and do kind of the fun stuff on social.
I'm telling you, Meet Edgar has saved me a lot of time in my own business and increased my social media engagement and, more importantly, traffic to my website. Want to give it a try? Go to elaynefluker.com/Meet Edgar to sign up now and use the promo code SEXY, SEXY, to get 1 month free plus $5 off your second month. That's elaynefluker.com/Meet Edgar, MEETEDGAR, 1 month free plus $5 off your second month. And now back to the show. So, Michelle, what would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
You know, that's an interesting question because I would say that in the beginning of my journey, I would have answered that question by kind of negating my femininity and saying I've had to learn to hustle, I've had to learn to be strong and be assertive. And in the more recent part of my journey, I would say it's taught me how to receive, how to be feminine, how to love, how to nurture, how to lead and support. So, you know, it's very interesting that entrepreneurship would have been my path towards greater femininity, but that's absolutely what's happened.
I love it. So in closing, if you think then over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
This is going to sound crazy, but I would maybe not his support, but that ex-boyfriend that I almost married, the Dateline NBC person, I would say that had that not happened, I would not be where I am right now. It was the wake-up call that I needed to step up and to speak up and to step into my greatest potential. So I am grateful every day for what that, put me through, because it's exactly why I had the wake up call and I'm where I am now.
The breakthroughs come sometimes during the breakdowns.
That's right. Damn straight.
So now tell us how we can support you. Of course, I'll have a link to the small events, big.money, but tell everyone your website, social media, all the ways to get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, you know what? I have a podcast too.
Yes.
And we just launched it, and I just found out yesterday that we're at number 61 in business careers, which is great. A big category.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And so my podcast is called Awaken Your Inner Superstar.
Mm-hmm.
You can check it out. You can just Google it or search for it on iTunes, or you can go to thesuperstarpodcast.com, thesuperstarpodcast.com. And then, my website is superstaractivator.com. And, that's a place where if you know of I love to go around and speak at entrepreneur conferences. I have a phenomenal stable of presentations that I can give to all sorts of audiences. And that's really the thing that drives our business the most today, while we're building up this more online piece. So speaking engagements, if somebody wants me to come talk to their association, organization, chamber, even if I can't do it in person, if it's a small group, I'll do a webinar. And my webinars, as you can imagine, I think you can tell by now, like I give value, because I know that when I do that, the business just follows.
So when you mention you'll give a webinar, you mean if someone wants to bring you in not as a speaker on stage, but as for a webinar? Yeah,
a speaker on a stage, definitely. And if for whatever reason it doesn't make sense, it's too far, it's too small or whatever, I could definitely do a virtual speaking spot as well.
Excellent. I love it. Michelle, talk about value. This was fantastic. I appreciate everything that you shared with us.
Oh, yay. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and I really look forward to staying in touch, Elayne.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to that too. I'm telling you, I'm going to be on that webinar. I'm all into everything you're doing.
I hope
it's
so.
Fantastic.
Yay.
Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Oh, let me see. I would say listen to your heart. I spent so many years listening to my head, trying to make decisions based on what was logical, what made sense, what was practical, what would make money. And at the end, following my heart is where all those other things started to fall into place anyways. So what is your heart telling you, and are you listening?
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Michelle. What is your heart telling you, and are you listening? Make sure you listen, and make sure you know the difference between your anchors and your engines. I'm telling you, I repeat that often. Now, to find out more about Michelle, to get in touch with her, to hear links, strategies, anything that she mentioned in this episode, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to that search icon at the top, and just type in Michelle, Michelle. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the information there for you. supportissexypodcast.com and just search Michelle. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Until we chat again, always remember that support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll chat with you soon. Take care.